Well, hi there. Warm welcome. You're watching Times Now and I'm Meghna Deka and you're watching the India Revival Mission. Well, today when there are close to 1 lakh new coronavirus cases every day being reported, the overall infections has crossed 51 lakhs and the death toll unfortunately is over 85,000. We look at ways to overcome the challenges and reclaim our lives. What's more important than our future? Our children, after all. Well, schools have been shut for the last 6 months and now under Unlock 4.0, the centre has given permission for schools to partially open from 21st of September onwards. But the final call is going to be taken by the state government. So on this show, we are going to be discussing the reasons, the safety precautions and even the feasibility of reopening schools. So let's introduce our panelists of educators as well as policy makers who are joining us here on the show. Well, there's Professor JS Rajput, the former Director of NCRT and the former member of National Education Policy here on the show. Mohandas Pai joins us, the Chairperson of Manipal Global Education. Dr. Simrit Kaur, the Principal of Shri Ram College of Commerce, as well as Ameeta Watal, the Springdales, Pusa Road's Principal. Well, let me first start with someone who's been part of these policy-making decisions on education, Professor JS Rajput. Well, Professor, do you think schools should be reopening amidst a pandemic, or are we being forced to, in this position, choose between safety and their future?
You see, this is not a problem created by any system. It's a global problem, it's a national problem, and we have to analyze it rather every week and every day. This is what has been done in consultation with so many people who are the stakeholders. The best that can be thought of has been proposed. Now, even state governments should take decisions depending on what is the position in a particular region, particular district or a particular area. If they have all the things ready, if the parents have been consulted, then they can think of. But every precaution has to be taken, every care has to be taken that in case something goes wrong, they will be able to handle it. The opinion of the parents is paramount. The support of the district administration and others is necessary. And the government has done its best by giving the flexibility. And even at the level of the principals, it should be possible to take a decision. And therefore, I think this is the best you can do, because you cannot continue in this online teaching, which is not reaching a substantial number of children at all.
Absolutely.
So that also is a big worry. I think this is the best that can be done at this stage.
Well, that's a very relevant point, and let me take off from there. Mohandas Pai, given when it comes to internet accessibility, the fact that you require laptops, smartphones, a lot of India's population does not have access to that. How long is it feasible to continue with online teaching? And if we do decide to get the children back into the classroom, what is the extent of precautions that it's possible for any school to monitor and put in place?
Well, let us understand one important thing. The pandemic is not going to go away in the short run. It's going to continue for some time. Second, the mortality rate has come down to very low levels in this country. Third, the infection rate per million people is not very high for India compared to the West. Now, we have to start opening up slowly, and I think the government policy is very right. They're saying that let us start opening for the senior schools. That is very valid. Let us leave it to the state government. That's very valid. And like Dr. Rajput said, the state government, in consultation with the schools, to start slowly opening up in the first phase for very senior students, and also make sure that it is voluntary for the first 2 weeks, so people get over the fear and slowly start operating. And I think this is a very, very good flexible move so that all stakeholders can come together and decide what has to be done. And like you said, online is working possibly for 45–50% of people, and it's not the solution. The solution is a mix of online, offline. And for that, schools have to open. And for that, the decisions have to be taken at the local level, at the school level by the headmaster in consultation with parents. And we must get viewpoints from a sufficiently large number of schools in a sufficiently large area, because the pandemic is not impacting everybody the same all across India. So I think we have to start opening up, and I support the move, but there has to be flexibility. The decisions have to be taken by each school in a particular area in consultation with the authorities and for senior students, and that's the way to start.
Right, that's an interesting point that you've made. In fact, let me take that across to Dr. Kaur. Even though we are talking about flexibility, there are these SOPs which have been put in place, not just by the centre. I'm sure even state governments themselves and even the schools themselves will be putting in several such steps and measures to ensure safety. But Dr. Kaur, here's the problem. How do we expect teachers, which is going to be allowed, if I'm not mistaken, around 50% of their capacity, teaching and non-teaching staff will be allowed. Would you be able to handle the caseload? What happens to the teachers, professors in your case? How are they going to be simultaneously teaching students who are sitting in front of them in class, also those who are at home then?
A very pertinent observations, and as of now it is very difficult to say because the issue of the pandemic is still unfurling, and very rightly we do not know whether it's going to be lasting for 1 year or more, and therefore and across India I'm talking about, not necessarily the institute I'm belonging to, so my views are more personal over here. With resource crunch, you actually do not know how much of infrastructure do you need to build in your own colleges and schools which are IT enabled. If all classrooms need to be enabled with IT infrastructure, whereas the teachers are also teaching in physical mode and simultaneously it is also going to the students who are listening in an online mode. You need to upgrade your own resources, and not all classrooms at the same time across the country can be upgraded to that level. So it is very important, and I think I would also like to reinforce what the government has done. We are opening up on a phased manner. We give the flexibility of the choice to the students whether they want to adopt the offline or the online mode. And just creating this kind of a flexibility has such wonderful mindsets, favorable impacts, that students now know whether they would like to go to the college, and especially who are disadvantaged, whether economically or physically or socially or even gender disadvantaged. So if you want to be in the premises, be there. But the question, ma'am, which you very rightly said, you need to have data which is collected, data that is analyzed. Supposing we float a Google sheet and the student response is only about 10 or 12% of the students would like to come to the school.
Right.
You could have a model wherein they come only for clarifying their queries, and the rest of the students are not there. Because the moment you have not a simultaneous delivery lecture mechanism, the workload of the teachers would go up automatically.
Absolutely.
First in an online mode, then in an offline. But I must say, ma'am, that ultimately the success of the program will depend upon the implementation levels within the schools and the colleges.
So
having an
onus eventually will come down to the schools, the college administration to implement this in a smooth manner, as we all, I think, agree that we really don't know how long this pandemic situation is going to continue. But Ameeta Watal, you are of course the principal of Springdales School, and I have been speaking to some of the parents who send their children to your school. One of the biggest concerns, especially for those who are there in the primary school, are saying that the children barely understand basic hygiene. How will you implement these protocols and SOPs, that of hygiene, washing hands, no social distancing, especially in primary school?
Thanks, Meghna, for that. What I want to clarify is that the guidelines that have not come for the primary school at all. In fact, what we have to comply with is that students from classes 9th upwards. So the question of students...
Let me rephrase, because until 31st of September, there is a stop. But after that, this is a larger question on reopening, which may happen after 31st of September, if that were to happen.
No. Irrespective of that, the primary school has not been asked to come in any guideline. I want to make that very clear. Having said that, we've always complied. And again, I agree, there's no end to this tunnel. There's no light at the end of this tunnel. And there are 80% of people in this country where some of them are even learning in mohalla classrooms, where there are huge amounts of children who don't have access. We have already worked as a school, and many other schools along with us have sent out Google forms to parents, because ultimately we will comply. We will open our school on the 22nd, because the state government has also reiterated the order of the central government, Delhi state government. And so we will open. We have done all the, we've taken the conservancy, we have done the sanitization. We have sent out a Google form saying we are going to work in shifts with 1 hour only for a group of children coming in with all those, because after all, children have to come in for practical examinations, if at all. So there are two things we've said. One is the practical exams, if the parents are interested to send them, not the practical exams, I believe, but the practicals, and also the doubt clearing. But having said that, the onus is on the parent. But we promise that whatever situation is there, we will continue to educate the children online or offline, because that is what we have to do, because we can't abandon children in this whole setup. So the point is we must comply, because at some point across the world, schools are opening, schools are closing, they're again opening again. England has just opened its schools, it's again closing its schools. So this is something we have to start living with. And that is the reality. So keeping the small children away, which you're absolutely right, very difficult to have them wear masks, they'll get suffocated, they're very tiny. But the senior ones, and only for a few hours, not you start school at 8 and goes on till 2 in the afternoon, not at all. But for a staggered period of 1.5 hours, then again you clean the school, then you bring in another batch between 11:30 and 1, then again you clean the school. And again, we have to see that a whole lot of teachers have to be at home doing the online, and another group is there doing doubt clearing and doing the practicals and other things. So it has to be done in a very scientific and a very systematic manner, but we can't guarantee that the child who comes to us will not be infected. We can only do our best. And that's what I've also mentioned in the forms that I've sent out to the parents, in the Google forms, which they're going to fill in and send back to us.
Professor Rajput, there's something that Ameeta Watal said, and that is going to really strike a chord with a lot of parents as well, especially those of special needs children. What Ms. Watal has said, that we can't abandon our students, especially when it comes to special need children. They need counseling, they need training, and more importantly, they need routine. What is going to be the way forward for them? Because so far, the guidelines which have been coming in, it's not very clear as to what's going to happen to special needs schools.
No, a lot of work has to be done in every sector. For example,
Go ahead,
you need not you need not bring primary school children to the schools at all. Till the people have regained their confidence, and this confidence may be regained after senior students start coming, and it takes 2-3 weeks for people to realize. I am very much worried that if the figure crosses 1 lakh, there would be a very negative psychological impact on every parent. So let us hope it doesn't cross. As far as children of special group needs are concerned, there we always have to, as teachers, do extra inputs, extra preparation, and that will be necessary here also. The whole thing is like this. Your online thing has limitations. Your face-to-face mode also has limitations. Therefore, the situation has to be analyzed on day-to-day basis, on weekly basis, and the authority to take decisions must even go to the principals of the schools. This is my feeling. And schools should open on 21st only after the state governments have taken a decision, issued guidelines, and it must begin only at higher level where special needs children, special provisions are made. I would like to mention one thing. I have seen the examination, half-yearly examination being conducted by some well-equipped schools. They are conducted in the same manner as they were conducting earlier, except it is online. So they have to devise new methods. Even CBSE must consider that suppose tomorrow this particular batch in class 10 and 12 is to be examined, they cannot be examined online with the same routine type of question papers. A lot of work on this also is necessary, as it is necessary for the special group need children.
Mohandas Pai. Now, here are a few statistics which is slightly worrisome. In US, as we were discussing, the schools have already been opened. 72,993 new cases have come between 27th of August to 10th of September once they reopen school, which is a hike of 15% in 2 weeks. Are these going to be the apprehensions when India reopens schools?
Well, we will have apprehensions because, there is a fear of the unknown. Let us understand one thing. The pandemic is not going to go away in the next 6 months. There is no cure of a vaccine in the next 6 months. There is the fear of the unknown. There is considerable body of knowledge how to treat when things happen. And all the data so far says that younger people are not going to be suffering so much as elderly people. The mortality in the people above 60 is much, much higher. Mortality in moribund cases are much, much higher. So we got to learn to live with it. And how to learn to live with it? Call the senior students to come, start operating, let the schools get used to it. Let us get the data. Yes, some young senior citizens are going to get infected. They have got better, let us say, better ways to handle it by themselves. They're stronger. So we got to learn to live with it. The biggest challenge for everybody is the Board 12 examination, because they're going to have an examination next year in July, August. Let us learn how to deal with that. Younger children up to class 6, class 8 are not going to come right now. That is not a problem that we got. We got to deal with it. And the problem for private schools in India are very different from the problem for government schools. In the government school, there is no infrastructure, or there's lesser infrastructure. Maybe in Delhi government school, there's better infrastructure. In other government school in many states, there is no infrastructure. How do you deal with them? They got different problems. We got to talk with the headmasters of government school for class 12 and attend to class 10 and 12 problems now the next 35, 40 days. Learn from that and then get along with it. So let us segment the problem. Let us not globalize the problem. Not all children are going to come to school. Primary school children are not going to come to school.
Right.
Only the senior school children are going to come to school. And for the senior school children, the biggest problem is the Board 12, Board 10 examination. For them, the private schools are better equipped than the public schools.
Absolutely.
The better of private schools are better equipped. The worst of private schools are not well equipped. The better of government schools are better equipped. Like in Delhi, we heard the Chief Minister say, we're going to give you online, etc. So let us not globalize the problem. Let us give the problem to the school authorities. Let them understand what it is. Let each state decide, each city decide, each district decide, and slowly start up. So in 2 to 3 months' time, by maybe November or December, we have much better data, much better understanding. And I think start it off.
So there are not going to be any black and white solutions to it. It needs to be case specific, is what Mohandas Pai says. Dr. Kaur, if I can come to you, quite interestingly, and this is again something that Dr. Pai was saying, that students who are there in lower school, in the primary schools, those are the ones who are likely to be less susceptible as per data. Of course, that can be contested as well. But Dr. Kaur, when it comes to the young adults, like those who are going to colleges, unfortunately for them, they also fall into the same susceptibility bracket as any other adult then.
My response to this would be that there are symptomatic cases and there are asymptomatic cases. So even a young child of between 18 to 21 or 24 years could be a carrier of COVID-19, but it's an asymptomatic. So practically when this person, even when is fine in the beginning, but then starts coming to the college, there is a possibility that they pick up this particular virus and then transmit it to the elders at home with cardiovascular, heart diseases or diabetes, the ones who are more vulnerable. So my query over here and concern becomes, one needs to understand what is the transmission mechanism, which we call as the reproductive zero or the R naught. And this is ranging around 1.5 to 2.5. That means one carrier on an average will transmit the same to about 2.5 more people. Who are these? In colleges, it could be staff-to-staff transmission, staff to student, student to staff, or student to student. And an institution like ours, which is globally amongst the best, we don't have students who are coming from a range of 10 kilometers.
Right.
We have practically representative from every state. And if we open our colleges, and it's not in a phased manner, let's say all classes begin, then the entire realm of airlines opening, transportation, which is the rails opening, and including the PGs and the hostel facilities opening up.
Right.
So this is where the complications arise.
Absolutely.
And we are all ready. We have a standard operating procedure for most of the institutions, including ours. How are we going to open up our hostels, our canteens, our mess facilities, and the classes as and when the phased opening will start?
So essentially, again, it's going to come down to the school and college administrations. One very heartening fact is that the Lancet study, a recent study which has come out, says the impact of closing schools on transmission rate was only 2 to 4%. Hence, you have to look at what is the risk that you are taking when you decide to send your child to school. Only the transmission rate which came down was 2 to 4% after having closed the schools. Ameeta Watal, a quick question, however. Are you in talks, and this is something that Professor Rajput had talked about as well. It's important that we change not just the classroom that the children are being imparted these class, but also the entire syllabus. Are you in touch with the CBSE, and do you think a larger overhaul of the teaching system needs to be done? We don't know till how long we are going to be dealing with Corona after all.
No, I think the whole overall system has been taking place from March. The fact that 30% of syllabus was reduced, and it was reduced in a very scientific manner because it was more sort of concept-based than topic-based. And even as schools are working with students, especially from nursery to 8, the learning system is becoming more personalized. There are breakaway rooms. Students are getting involved with research-based sort of learning. As far as the younger children are concerned, trying to keep them offline, sending them resources to their homes so that they don't have to be connected all the time online, because it's not very good to be constantly online with very small children. So the entire system of the way that we are teaching, and CBSE is definitely taking a lot of pains to see that a certain project-based, concept-based learning, which is not really focused on rote, and even the kind of examinations that were being talked about just now, the kind of midterm exams we have given are given as open book. So it doesn't create a stress. So there are open book tests. We are testing their assessing their methodology of peer assessment through these breakout rooms. So there are very different innovative ways in which we are dealing with assessments so that even the child understands the content and at the same time doesn't.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, at the end of the day, the children are not just going to school to learn lessons. It's not about rote learning, but also the larger community feeling, the fact that they're interacting. Many of them are also getting meals for them, and of course a place which takes care of them while their parents are away. Can you simply abandon the children, is what one of our panelists has said. We are completely run out of time. A quick one-word answer I want from all of you. I'll just come from guest to guest. Are you in support of opening from class 9 to 12th, of course with parents' consent, from the 21st of September? Are we geared towards that? First, Professor Rajput, a short answer, yes or no?
No, it is yes, but we must be very serious about the government schools. The nation must support and put pressure on government to provide them all the necessary wherewithals.
Very pertinent point. Let's also look specifically at the government school, not just the private school. Mohandas Pai, your words.
It is a yes for me. Let us start off with the safety precautions, and the government should talk to government school headmasters, and the good schools should start opening up, and let us review every 15 days. Yes.
So, Dr. Kaur, yes or no from you?
Ma'am, it would be in 3 phases. Yes, to begin. Second, it should be the flexibility is to be provided, and review must be undertaken. And it must be ensured that SOPs are not on papers, but they are actually implemented at the institution or the school level.
Implementation of the SOPs, that's going to be the key. Ameeta Watal, yes or no?
There has to be a very strong parent-school relationship which has commitment, courage and purpose, and it should not have any kind of trust deficit. So I think if we have a relationship, I don't understand why parents shouldn't send their children to school.
So that comes in with a resounding yes, of course, with a lot of precautions thrown in. Thank you so much, all our panelists, for joining us. I spoke to a lot of parents before we did this show, which is why there were several questions which they had asked, and I have asked you those questions. Hopefully their fears and apprehensions are going to be laid at rest. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here on Times Now. Stay tuned.